beautiful sunny day, light breeze, good company. We've got business to take care of today, and we've got some exciting news to talk about here in the Port of New Bedford. I want to welcome everyone to the city and Port of New Bedford today. And I want to begin by setting the stage. I want to welcome in particular Senator Markey, Congressman Keating, Lieutenant Governor Polito, and Deputy EPA Administrator Janet McCabe. And in a moment I'll introduce Dave Cash, EPA's Regional Administrator. But let me begin by setting the scene here. So we are situated right here with a grand view of the port at an energy facility, past, present, and future. This site was the site of many up and down the Port of New Bedford where the whaling industry deployed. At its height, just before the Civil War, New Bedford was the center of the world's whaling industry. Half of the whaling vessels in the entire globe were home ported right here, and it brought great wealth to the city. On the eve of the Civil War, New Bedford was the wealthiest city per capita in the United States. And of course, things changed. The small matter of the Civil War, technological obsolescence, a number of other things led to the pretty quick decline of the whaling industry. However, as New Bedford, like so many other cities after the Civil War, began to industrialize, industry needed more power, and so that's where this came in. So in the late 1860s, an energy plant was established here. Originally a coal plant, later a coal gasification plant, later a oil and natural gas plant. This site, for many, many years, generated electricity that powered New Bedford's economy as it switched from whaling to manufacturing, textiles first and then other manufacturing. And about in the 1990s, and most significantly, Senator, I worked here as a summer intern too in the 90s. I have to drop a footnote for that. I worked in there in the 90s, but it was right after that this place shut down. An inefficient older plant went offline, but now it is becoming something very different, which is a part of the New Bedford's effort to become a center of the offshore wind industry, something that we've been working on for many years. And so thanks to the investments of Andrew Saunders and his investment team, Foss Maritime, a leader in maritime construction from the West Coast, this site is about to become both a deployment site and an operations and maintenance site for offshore wind farms down the East Coast. It's really exciting for us, and it's really a mark of how New Bedford, symbolic of how New Bedford has reinvented itself time after time after time to be competitive, to provide opportunities for its residents. And so it's with that backdrop today we have some great news from the EPA. And without any further ado, I want to introduce a good friend of New Bedford's over many years, someone who used to be in charge of the State Department of Environmental Protection, but now is the EPA's Region 1 Administrator, and that is Dave Cash, who's going to MC this event. Dave, where are you? Come on down. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. And it is a good morning. This is pretty remarkable to be here on this site. I like the way that the mayor had kind of put this into context of the way that New Bedford has reimagined and transformed itself over the years. I'll be emceeing today. I'm the regional administrator of the U.S. EPA's office in New England, where we work with the 6 New England states and the tribes, the 10 tribes that are in New England. I was so excited about speaking, I didn't put my glasses on. And I would also like to take this moment to remember that no matter where we are standing in New England, we're on the ancestral lands of indigenous peoples who've inhabited this area for generations and still inhabit and steward these lands and waters. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when we have these kind of celebrations. One of the things that I was struck by here is I feel like I'm in a time machine, and a time machine that's about to move really, really quickly into the future. As the mayor noted, you turn around, you see fuel tanks, you see an aging, crumbling, fossil fuel-driven power plant that hasn't operated in years, and you look across the harbor, you see some wind turbines that are just a tiny fraction of what we're going to power New England by in the future. And that's what this is about. How do we take what's happened in the past, legacy pollution, problems that we've had in this harbor, and turn them around and transform them into the future that we all want. And before we have the speakers come up, I just want to introduce them so you know who's who. We have EPA Deputy Administrator Janet McCabe. Great to have you in New England again. U.S. Senator Edward Markey, U.S. Congressman William Keating. Of course, I saw staff from Senator Warren's office and the rest of our congressional delegation who have worked really hard to get infrastructure funding here. Massachusetts Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito, wonderful to have you here today. And there's some folks from Mass DEP as well. It's fantastic, including Deputy Commissioner Paul Locke. Of course, City of New Bedford, you've just heard from Mayor John Mitchell. Town of Fairhaven, across the harbor, Board Member Bob Espindola. Where's Bob? Hi, Bob. And U.S. Army Corps Colonel John Adelano is right behind over here to the left. And I know he's not speaking today, but the Community Representative Kevin Rose is in the audience. Hey, Kevin, great to have you here today. I'd also like to just give a shout out to the EPA team. Those of you you'll hear about, this has been a decades-long process. Tens and tens of millions of dollars have gone into cleaning up this harbor, getting the PCBs out of the harbor, reconstructing the shorelines, making it suitable for herons and fish, etc. And it's a phenomenal team that we have here, and I just want to acknowledge them pretty quickly. We've got Dave Dickerson, Maximilian Bowl, Cynthia Lewis, Dave Peterson, Manchak Ng, Matt Audette, Bob Cianciarulo, Brian Olson, Megan Cassidy, Kelsey Dumville, Zanetta Purnell, Charlotte Gray, Doug Gutrow, and please give them a huge round of applause. I also want to note folks from the Massachusetts legislature who are here, always been partners when I was in state government, and now that I'm in the federal government, I know Representatives Markey, Hendricks, Strauss, and Cabral are here. Please, everybody give them up. So, we are here and incredibly excited to be announcing EPA funding, what Deputy Administrator McCabe will do. New Bedford is an exemplar of what the multiple efforts that go into investing in environmental cleanup to get multiple benefits. And I like to think of these as win, 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 win. I'm losing count of all the wins when you're here in New Bedford. We get a win from cleaning up legacy pollution, a win for creating a more vibrant ecosystem, a win that spurs economic development, a win that transforms a huge environmental bad into a community asset, a win that drives jobs in underserved communities with legacy of pollution, and a win to help launch the offshore wind industry, all of the innovation, all of the jobs, and all of the carbon-free emissions that are going to come from that. So it's a phenomenal moment for us to be celebrating today. And as we stand here, as the mayor noted, taking this property, converting it into something that's going to be part of the offshore wind industry in tandem with all the other parts up and down this harbor. You can see EPA's Superfund fingerprints all over this harbor in really positive ways, working with our partners in the city, working with our partners in state, working with our other agencies across the federal brotherhood and sisterhood. So it's phenomenal to be here today. And without waiting any longer, I wanted to bring up Deputy Administrator Janet McCabe. She's been a steadfast supporter of linking environmental protection and economic development in the many, many realms that she's worked in. Deputy Administrator?
Well, thank you, David, and thanks to everybody for being here this morning. This is just such a super exciting day, also a little windy, which is one of the reasons that we're here doing what we're doing. David has introduced everybody, but I'll just say thank you so much, Selectmen, Congressman, Senator, Mayor, Colonel, Lieutenant Governor. Just wonderful to be here with you all, and as David acknowledged, the important work of the staff of EPA, DEP, congressional offices, everybody, the mayor's office, everybody who makes these projects important. I especially appreciated the mayor putting this in a little bit of historical context for us. Everywhere EPA does work is a place where people live, where people work, where people, families have lived for generations, and they call it home. And that we need to remember that always, that the work that we're doing is improving where people live and they raise their families and they work and they go to school. And that's why this is so exciting. Today in particular is a super exciting day. As David said, over the years, New Bedford has been on the National Priorities List site since 1983. The Superfund law was passed in 1980, and 3 years later, New Bedford went on the list, one of the earliest sites. That's nearly 40 years ago. And millions of dollars has been invested in this area over that time period. The city of New Bedford has been extremely proactive in seeking dollars to help improve conditions here and take care of the industrial pollution that happened over decades since the Industrial Revolution, starting in a time when people thought that harbors like this were a place to put your waste. And we know that that's not right. But just think of how many millions of dollars and how long it's taken to fix the problem that was created. So I am very, very pleased to be able to say today that through the good work of the U.S. Congress and President Biden in enacting the bipartisan infrastructure law, that EPA is able to allocate nearly $73 million, $72.7 million in funding that after nearly 40 years will allow this site to be finished after so many years of hard work and all the effort. And there are even some retired EPA Region 1 employees here who worked on this site for many years in the past. So families have grown up around this effort. The bipartisan infrastructure law is a once-in-a-generation investment, or really actually even more momentous than that. I don't know how many people here today were born during the Eisenhower administration. I was not. Okay, there's somebody raising his hand who certainly was not born during the Eisenhower administration. But that's the last time the country invested this kind of money in our infrastructure. This is an incredible opportunity, and it's going to water pipes around the country. It's going to climate resilience projects. It's going to electrifying our national school bus fleet. And it is also, importantly, helping us accelerate Superfund and hazardous waste and brownfields cleanups. These are sites that for years have been sitting there, being a blight on the community. People have been working on getting them ready, and what they needed was the money to move forward. And the bipartisan infrastructure law is making that possible. And that is the key to getting New Bedford over the finish line over the next couple of years. I'm also happy to announce today that EPA and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts have completed work on a settlement that has been lodged today with Cornell Dubilier Electronics, which will result in an additional $4 million to go to the funds to clean up this site. With all of these funds, EPA foresees completing the shoreline remediation work with our partners within about 3 years. Compare that to 40 years of getting to today. 3 years is within, you can see that. I want to give a special shout out to the legal team at EPA and their colleagues at the Department of Justice and their counterparts working for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This is hard work and takes a long time to work with corporations that are responsible for pollution and making sure that they take responsibility for paying to clean that up. Over the years, various legal settlements have provided a total of about $500 million to help address the PCB pollution here. So once again, another really important step. It will allow us to streamline our work, get it done by 2025, and we're going to be handing the shoreline support facility on Sawyer Street over to the city, which means the city can move forward with important investments and developments that it has on its drawing board. So we're so excited about this, so excited about all the contaminated sediment that is no longer at the bottom of the harbor and has been safely disposed of. The work has been tremendous. It takes partnership, federal, state, and local governments. In this case, EPA, the state of Massachusetts, the city of New Bedford, and our congressional partners. This is good for public health. It's good for quality of life. It is good for economic development. And I am so proud that this is a site in this country that is at the forefront of the clean energy revolution. And I will be proud to say and to tell my little grandson who lives in Boston, when he sees those windmills, that EPA has been a part of that. There's still plenty of work to do, but I think we can all say that we see the finish line, and I very much look forward to coming back in 3 years and coming to the spot again, if I can get through the gate, and seeing how the finished product looks. So thank you all for coming. Thanks for your support for this important day. And David, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Administrator, and your leadership in Washington has been fantastic, and your trips up to New England have been such a pleasure to be with you. The next person needs so little introduction. Senator Ed Markey has been at the forefront of environmental policy innovations and pushing really important goals that can transform what's behind you to what we're getting out in deep water off the coast here. I had the pleasure many years ago when I was in state government to work with his team on the Markey-Waxman bill that, of course, didn't come to the final outcome that we all wanted, and that didn't stop him. He's been working since then, assiduously, getting to the point that we are today and moving even beyond as quickly as we can to the clean energy future. Senator Markey?
Thank you so much. Thank you, David, so much. Thanks to everyone who is joining us here today, to my partner in the United States Congress, Bill Keating. Just so great to be with you again. Just such an incredible advocate for New Bedford, for our state. To Colonel John Adelano, thank you, sir. We are just so fortunate to have him in Massachusetts, in New England, as our leader of the Army Corps of Engineers. All of this requires engineering. And Governor Polito, thank you so much. This is a partnership, a federal-state partnership, to make sure that the city of New Bedford receives the resources which they need and is able to move forward for a 21st century economic plan for this great city. And that great city led by Mayor Mitchell. We thank you so much for all of the work which you are doing and are continuing to do. And this incredible all-star state legislative delegation, Tony Cabral. Thank you, Tony, for all of your great leadership. To Bill Strauss, thank you. To Chris Markey over here, thank you, Chris. To Chris Hendricks, who just absolutely in partnership with the rest of this team. I know Paul Schmidt could not be here, but and Paul Schmidt, Paul here too. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for being here as well. Just such an incredibly great leader. And to Kevin Rose, the president of the International Longshoremen Association, thank you for being here. Just so important that this partnership be recognized and that everyone is here. So it's a big day. it's a day that recognizes, again, the Army Corps and all of the incredible work which they have been doing to clean up the harbor. And we thank, honestly, Deputy Administrator Janet McCabe for coming here today. This is it's a big project. It's a project that has been going on for a long time. I served in Congress on the committee in 1980 that created the Superfund project. Some of the names you can still remember who served on the committee with me. Some have forgotten. But I sat next to Al Gore as a young congressman as we were putting together the Superfund program. And John Dingell and Jim Florio, who became the governor of New Jersey. He was instrumental because of the incredible pollution in the state of New Jersey. In 1980, we finished that law. And thank goodness we did. Because once Ronald Reagan took over, he began an attempt to dismantle the program. In fact, by 1983, our committee had to lead the effort to put the head of the Superfund program, Rita Lavelle, her name was, under Ronald Reagan, in prison for non-implementation of the Superfund program. So that was a huge battle. But in 1983, New Bedford was put on the Superfund list to make it eligible for all of the funding that would be necessary to remediate all of the damage which had been done to the harbor over all of those years. So that is now coming up to its 40th anniversary. And as we know, a vision without funding is an hallucination, which is why we're so proud to bring the $73 million here today to finish off this incredibly important historic project. Ultimately, it will have been close to $1 billion which was spent to clean up this New Bedford harbor mess that had been left by a generation of industrialists who used New Bedford harbor as a dumping ground. Rather than ensuring that all of the environment was protected, instead they said they would increase their profits rather than protect against the pollution that would haunt New Bedford harbor for generations. And now we're on the cusp of a new era. And this funding is possible because of the incredible investment which we made in the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill of 2021, which President Biden signed. And that funding is coming back here in the form of jobs that are going to be created to finish this project, and then the new jobs which will be created along New Bedford Harbor. And this is a powerful coalition of federal, state, and local leaders who have made it possible. And it shows that we can help right the wrongs of the past, that we can restore these storied waters for the people, and we can solidify the bright blue future for this world-class port city. In partnership with the Biden administration, Congressman Keating and I worked hard to deliver for cities like New Bedford, deliver clean water, deliver clean air, deliver justice for cities who had unfortunately been used and then abandoned by polluting companies. With this funding, we will finally be able to clean up the toxic PCBs that have been putting their poison into the sediments of New Bedford Harbor for far too long. Together, we can now make PCB stand for Pristine Clean Bay, with a clean and healthy food chain and marine ecosystem throughout the Acushnet River and Buzzards Bay. Our communities shouldn't bear the physical and economic cost of pollution left behind by bygone companies. That toxic debt is unfair, it's unjust, and it's unacceptable. The EPA, using its authority, and we thank you, Janet McCabe, for being here, is providing the leadership which we need for New Bedford after all of these years. And it is giving us an opportunity to lift our gaze to the constellation of possibilities for New Bedford, for Massachusetts, and for our country. That is what we are celebrating here today. $72.7 million commitment, a commitment which deserves celebration because it is long overdue. When we invest in healthy communities, we all win. That's the ultimate promise of environmental action, including investments to supercharge our clean energy economy, investments to change this vision from a rear-view mirror view of our economy to one that looks straight ahead into a bright blue future for New Bedford. And by putting our money to what matters most, to get a clean, healthy environment, a clean, healthy economy, and clean, healthy jobs. All of this is possible if we stop pollution before it happens, fund the cleanups of historic toxic chemicals, including by making companies pay for their pollution, which the EPA is doing today in New Bedford, and making climate-smart investments. In Moby Dick, Herman Melville called New Bedford perhaps the dearest place to live in all of New England. He wrote that it was a land of oil, of corn, and of wine. Today, it's a city that is looking at fishing and wind turbines and a new vision for what New Bedford can be for the 21st century. New Bedford is a city that has always been tied to both industry and ecology, invention and environment. For generations, its rich waters have given this country so much, and now the country is giving back to keep these waters safe for generations to come. That is why we are here today. We are here today to celebrate that. And all I can tell you is in the Senate, Senator Warren and I, we're fighting very hard to ensure that the funding is there for all of these programs. And we do so in partnership with this fierce warrior, Bill Keating, who stands up and fights for New Bedford every single day. Our goal now in the 21st century is to stop these pollutants before they are released into the air and water so that we clean up legacy dangers. We can and we have to do more to provide justice in a livable environment to communities across the Commonwealth and across the country. That is our job. We have a new vision for this linkage between New Bedford and this great ocean. And there lies the future for all of the future generations of New Bedford residents. And that is why I am so proud to be here today with you to make this historic announcement about all of the funding that will come from the infrastructure bill through the EPA to New Bedford. It's all about the future. Thank you all so much. Thank you for everything that you are doing.
Thank you so much, Senator Markey. And as he described, a colleague of his in Congress who's been a fighter for these funds, who is responsible in his district from southeastern Massachusetts, from pristine kettle ponds to ocean beaches, to industrial cities, to scallop fisheries. He has been a champion of our communities, a champion of our environment, Congressman Bill Keating.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and a pleasure to be here with my colleague, Senator Markey, who I served with in the House and now serve with him as he's in the Senate. And I think in the decades and decades of his work, any time that a colleague or any time anyone thought of a word, the face Ed Markey would come up, and that word is the environment. He's been a champion for years, at times when it wasn't popular with some of these causes, and now when we have a more enlightened period when people understand the advantage. So it's a pleasure to be here, Senator, with you. Mayor Mitchell, your hard work here on the city's harbor and your own personal history lives forward. Also, the Army Corps, we keep them busy in our district. I think they will tell you our district is busier than any district, I think, in the country in these areas. Lieutenant Governor Polito, congratulations on your retirement, which is an active retirement, and your commitment to working with municipalities and that key role that you've had. Thank you for that service. Our federal administrators, and there's Deputy Administrator McCabe, who, I don't know if you know this, but years and years ago in her early life, she was the executive director of a program called Improving Kids' Environment. And she took that role to heart, and she's taken it after Harvard Law School and her legal acumen going forward, knowing that combining an understanding, appreciation for the environment with the needed skills that are necessary to go forward. We're all stewards of that environment. All of us are here, with everyone here, everyone out there, as stewards of the environment. We're here, too, because we're looking forward to improving this with the help of labor, strong and part of the city that's so consequential to our progress going forward, and importantly, on the private side. Because of events like today, you're seeing private investment in this footprint going forward that's going to be integral for the future as well. I mean, there's 18,000 acres here in this area. I'm a little more removed, but we share Buzzards Bay, even where I live. But just within 3 miles of this site, there are over 100,000 people that live here. And for years, keenly aware of what was going on here. You know, if you look back at this history, and I can't help but pause to have us all reflect why indeed we're here in the first analysis. We're here because mistakes knowingly and unknowingly were made. And whether they were unwillingly known or not, they were made, and we live with the consequences of that. From the 1940s to the 70s, the pollution here was terrible in nature with the PCBs. The destruction, quite serious. And that's why this is, importantly, a continuing process of rectifying that. You know that of all the funds that are expended, we're talking about $73 million here out of the infrastructure bill, but 30% of the funding over time has come directly from the pocketbooks of taxpayers. Despite the great effort legally and getting settlements, and it was great to hear there's another settlement of $4 million to go with at least a major settlement years ago of $367 million to deal with this, that they're just catching up to pay for the legacy of contamination that came from that. And sadly, years ago, some of the surcharges on the petroleum and chemical industry was taken away in 1995. But as part of this infrastructure bill that people, I don't think, fully realize, we put that back on chemical producing companies so that they can continue to bear the brunt of what they do going forward. But the lessons here that we should learn are, as we deal with the present, we should be ever mindful that the decisions made have great consequences, whether it's with Holtec decommissioning the Plymouth facility or in other industries. It's so important that we pause, think about what we could be doing. It costs so much, and sometimes it's not perfect in mitigating the results of decades of abuse. and contamination. So we're here gathering as stewards of the environment. We're here in one of the most historic parts of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, if not the country, in a harbor, in a city that welcomed the first energy triumph in whale oil, that also introduced so many important aspects of the U.S. population, with the Portuguese American population coming through these harbors, as well as so many other groups, building the city strong. And today, we sit and appreciate that history. But today, we realize this is a linchpin for the future. And this future here is bright. This is an example not only in our Commonwealth, but an example for our country in how we move forward and take adversity and turn it into strength. This is economically vibrant, environmentally vibrant. This is a place to invest. This is a place to work. This is a place where everyone has the chance to move forward. And it's a proud day for New Bedford and the surrounding areas, including our Fairhaven elected official who's here, as well as the Acushnet officials. This is really a day of pride. And today, we can just take great pride in what's being accomplished here. The final step where clean topsoil will be placed in here and a salt marsh in its place, which will holistically help to clean the area. This is an absolute equivalent of back to the future. And today, we take great pride in everyone that's here and those that came before us in making this investment come forth to a reality today. A great day for New Bedford, a great day for the environment, a great day for our local economy, a great day for local workers, and a great place to live and invest in. And we're just so proud that we came together to do it. And I'll tell you this, Deputy Administrator, I'll leave on this note, that when you're talking about getting things done environmentally, when you talk about finishing it up in 3 years, we won't hear those words too much as things go around the country. So we'll be here witnessing the finalization of this in the shortest time frame that I could imagine. One of the great reasons why this particular project was in the front of the line when it came to funding the over $1 trillion that the Senate and I worked hard to make sure became a reality. So joining with our colleagues in the legislature, our colleagues in the administration, our colleagues in labor, colleagues in the private side, city officials, all joining together to make sure that beyond those 3 years, we'll be looking at this as a fundamental day of history, as a new future for New Bedford goes forward. So thank you so much, all of you, and thank all of you who have made today a reality.
Thank you, Congressman. It's a perfect segue into my next introduction as he listed all of the partnerships. These kinds of investments and solutions are impossible without partnerships from the municipal to the state to the federal level to local community groups to NGOs. And I know that when Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito came into office, her focus, one of the main pieces of her portfolio was on municipalities. She created the Commonwealth Compact to bring municipalities together in a really powerful way, knowing that actions that happen on the state and federal level have huge impacts on municipalities, and that's where often the expertise is. So, Lieutenant Governor Polito.
Thank you very much, Dave. It's awesome to be here with everyone. I want to acknowledge Senator Markey, thank you, and Congressman Keating. I want to thank you, Colonel, for all the incredible work that undoubtedly your team, coupled with the longshoremen and other private investors, will do to make the hard work become real and completed. And I want to say to the Deputy, just in a few years when you come back with your grandson, who will be taking a ride on the South Coast Rail from Boston to a place not too far from here, he will no longer see this building and he will no longer see these tanks, and he will certainly see a very bright future and really experience it, and also get some clams and a great meal and a walk down the beautiful historic downtown in New Bedford, and really get an understanding when he gets to the Whaling Museum of what the back in the future was all about and what the new future certainly will be. It is just an incredible tribute also to the municipal leaders here, Mayor Mitchell, the ward councilors, Acushnet and Fairhaven officials. Thank you for all of your incredible work at the local level, at your city halls and your town halls, because you're the ones that make it ready. You're the ones that are doing the planning and doing the hard work so that when this opportunity comes forward, this is an incredible opportunity with a bipartisan infrastructure bill and the resources that it contains, to have those deployed here. Now, the senator and congressman, as good as they are at their jobs, they do have to convince their colleagues that this is a site worthy and ready to take those funds and put them to fast use. The other piece of this is not only readiness, but acceleration. We can't afford to lose a minute to take advantage of all the incredible opportunities with the future of offshore wind and renewable energy, and also making sure that other industries that have long always been a part of the New Bedford history, commercial fishing and recreational fishing and all of the attributes associated with the tourism industry here, also be a part of this incredible story. So just want to thank you for your advocacy in getting these dollars to the door. I also want to thank our colleagues at the State Department of Environmental Protection, Mass DEP, who are a strong partner with their EPA officials, who are the leads of this project. Because as the lead regulator, they also need to dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure that the dollars are put to use and everyone is held accountable. This isn't a state-enhanced remedy project, which there aren't as many of those in the country, that allows this harbor to get the fullness of the cleanup that comes with these resources. I also want to say that the benefit of cleaning out the bad stuff allows you to separate that from the good material and then redeploy that to the North Terminal, to the South Terminal, to Fairhaven, so that new economic development opportunities can be appreciated. So there's a lot of benefits to what's happening here. Flipping over to my colleagues at the state level, I can't thank you enough, Representative Markey and Cabral and Strauss and Hendricks and Schmidt, and of course Senator Antigone called on my way, and perhaps a few of you, to acknowledge all the work that this delegation does together, all on the same page, making sure with one voice they are advocating for the needs of this community. I want to thank you for your partnership over the past 7.5 years now through the Seaport Economic Council and through our bonding authorizations, because we've been able to secure $35 million for harbor dredging that will completely complement the navigational dredging that is part of the federal EPA project, so that the commercial fishermen not only will be able to get into this port, but also get into the berths to be able to continue to do the work that they need to do as family-owned businesses and as longtime business owners in this community, in an industry that clearly has been impacted due to COVID and is working to update and innovate itself as it thinks about its future with commercial fishing coexisting with the offshore wind large-scale development that will soon be off our shores here. So a lot of great work being done by this delegation. I want to thank you for that. And I also want to thank you for the great work you're doing for the Economic Development Bill. The governor just filed that. It's in your shop. That contains millions of dollars of more for New Bedford, Mr. Mayor, which in the bill are already identified projects that are ready to take those resources and continue to build on this incredible momentum that New Bedford is experiencing. So it's a great day to spotlight all the great work. I want to congratulate you for being ready, and we can't thank you enough, our federal partners, for being able to accelerate this momentum even further. I just say the flywheel is flying, and it's flying really fast, and it's doing a lot of great work for this region of our Commonwealth. I couldn't be more proud of our partners in the South Coast. Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you so much, Governor. A number of years ago, when I worked in state government, I traveled down to New Bedford. I actually traveled down to New Bedford quite a bit during that time, but I came to one event where we were celebrating a solar installation at an old Superfund and brownfield site on Sullivan Ledge. And I joined the mayor there, and the feeling was really similar to this. That is, taking a problem in the community and turning it into a good, turning it into a benefit for the community. And the mayor has done a phenomenal job of working with state and federal partners to bring resources and technical support to benefit the city of New Bedford, and this is just the latest example of that. Mayor Mitchell.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I think, Dave, one way to say that is that we're making chicken salad out of chicken something or else. As a saying, it's just not coming to mind. But no, thank you. Thank you very much. And a couple of words of thanks, and then just a couple of comments to offer to connect a couple of dots. So, first off, I do want to recognize our interim port director, George Krikorian, and our director of resilience, Michelle Paul, who are intimately involved in all things New Bedford Harbor, all things cleanup. Thanks, guys. I want to acknowledge the enormous support that we get from our City Council President Ian Abreu, Ward 4 Councilor Derek Baptiste. This is Ward 4. You're in his ward right now. Ward 6 Councilor Ryan Herrera, whose ward is also directly affected. Another councilor whose ward is directly affected is Ward 2 Councilor Maria Giesta. And I saw Ward 5 Councilor Scott Lima. It looks like he had to split, but thank you for all of your support. I also wanted to recognize my good friend Buddy Andrade, who plays an instrumental role in our work in readying our workforce for the opportunities that lie ahead. Buddy, thank you. Again, many thanks. Many thanks to the Biden administration and to the EPA for sticking to it. Our understanding is that New Bedford Harbor was America's first marine Superfund site. It was put on the national priority list right out of the gate for good reason. It was hugely contaminated. There's a long story there, but the bottom line is it was hugely contaminated and hugely expensive to clean up. And this funding gets us over the goal line, and that's really the significance of this. So we really want to thank you, Deputy Administrator McCabe, for seeing it through. And of course, our congressional delegation, Senator Markey, Congressman Keating, for the support that is absolutely necessary to provide the funding to make it happen. This stuff doesn't happen automatically, and it certainly doesn't happen for free. I want to thank the partnership kernel that we have with the Army Corps. We're looking out. Among other sites of interest is the New Bedford Hurricane Barrier, which is the largest levee on the east coast of the United States, and that barrier gate right there and the ocean-facing part of it is managed by the Army Corps. So the Army Corps has played a big role not only in that management but also in this cleanup right from the start. While we were in grade school, Colonel, all the way back then when Superfund started, and of course our great partnership with the Baker-Polito administration. If you couldn't tell, the Lieutenant Governor is very versed in all things Port of New Bedford, and that's because she's been such a close partner over the years and making things happen. So I really want to thank you for all of your support. Of course, Dave, you've been at it in so many, wearing so many hats over the years, and we know New Bedford's your favorite, and we appreciate that, even if you don't say it aloud publicly. So let me just say a couple things. So just the dots I want to connect are these. So you might say, well, harbor cleanup, how does it have to do with jobs? How does that have to do with improving the city, right? Because it sounds like sort of abstract in a way. Well, you clean the harbor up, and then why does that lead to jobs? So let me talk about that. And also let me talk about the broader context of where New Bedford sits in America. We're an older industrial city in the Northeast. We're not part of a major metro. We're not in the orbit of Boston or any other superstar city. We have to make our own way. We do that really through two things: competing economically, out-hustling everybody, and making this place a really nice place to live. And the investment that we're discussing today advances both of those goals. So why is it that jobs will be created when we have a cleaner harbor? the lieutenant governor was getting into this. When you have a harbor, a working harbor has to be dredged all the time, right? Harbors get silted up, and when they get silted up, ships can't make it to their facilities, right? So that's why we dredge. But when the silt is contaminated, it's extremely difficult. It's extremely expensive to remove. And all the folks at EPA have been with this for a long time. Dave Dickerson, Dave Lederer, who've spent the better part of their careers working on this, know it well. It costs $600 a cubic yard to pull the most contaminated material out of there, right? Cubic yard, right? That adds up over 18,000 acres. That's a lot of dough. What this cleanup has done so far and will be finished up will allow us to do is to continue to dredge. And that will allow ships to get to facilities, all the facilities that we want to get funding for, as we can't remind folks enough, right? We want to, that's why it leads to jobs, because it allows the port to function. And the Port of New Bedford is the center of this region, right? If it weren't for the Port of New Bedford, this entire region of Massachusetts would be farmland. This is what makes this entire region go. Greater New Bedford goes as the Port of New Bedford goes. So that's one thing. That's the jobs. The second thing is, we want to make this a really nice place to live for everybody. That's why we built things like the Harbor Walk and the Cove Walk on top of the dike, and the Corps played a great role in allowing that to happen, to connect everybody, regardless of walk of life, to the water, right? Because everybody likes it. We all like water views. The money that will finish up this cleanup will allow that to happen in the near north end, right? The poorest neighborhoods in the city, in Ward 2 and Ward 3, older tenement neighborhoods built during the textile heyday, those folks in that neighborhood deserve to have great public amenities. And when the harbor is done being cleaned up, we'll be able to build the river walk in the north end, and people will be connected to the water in that part of the city for the first time ever since it became a city. And that's pretty cool. So when people are able to enjoy their time with their kids by the water, when they're able to take a moment and just gaze out at the water, as we all like to do, that enhances quality of life. And that's what makes city life worth living. And it's those great public spaces that we seek to build, and the contamination in the harbor has been a barrier until now. That's why this is significant. And that's why all of this is all of a piece. When we're able to do this work through key federal funding, we can make a lot of other great stuff happen, and I'm just so proud that we're able to get this over the hump. This is something that people doubted could be done for decades. Like, they just assumed this was never going to happen. It's happening now, and there's an awful lot to be optimistic about, to look forward to, and I'm so glad everybody's got to be part of this announcement today, because it's been a tremendous team effort. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, environmental problems and challenges and economic development don't stop at the borders of cities and towns and states. And just across the harbor in Fairhaven, they've been active partners over the years in this, and I want to welcome to the podium a member of the Select Board, Espandola, been for 10 years on the board and worked closely with New Bedford and the state on addressing these issues. Please come on up.
Good morning. Thank you. On behalf of my fellow Select Board members, Town Administrator Angie Lopes-Ellison, our new administrator, and the entire town of Fairhaven, I'd like to thank the Biden-Harris administration, the EPA, the U.S. Army Corps, the Baker-Polito administration, Congressman Keating, Senator Markey, the local delegation that we heard about, and for all of them for this very, very significant grant. And it's obvious that the passion that all the speakers before me had. When Deputy Chief McCabe came back to her seat, she said, "Wow, wasn't that fun?" And you can really hear it in all their voices. They're really passionate about this cause, and we really appreciate that. My fellow Select Board member, Leon Corey, is here today as well. Fairhaven is proud to share the harbor with the great city of New Bedford, and to enjoy its prosperous past, present, and future tied directly to the harbor. We have approximately 30 miles of shoreline in Fairhaven, and much of that shoreline runs along the Acushnet River and Fairhaven New Bedford Harbor. We value the recreational opportunities offered to us by the harbor And when New Bedford ranks as the #1 fishing port in the country year after year, that bounty spills over into Fairhaven, into our working waterfront with our shipyards and a multitude of marine-based business enterprises. We have learned the great value of dredging the harbor to ensure the industries are able to maximize their potential. Federal and state funds to help with dredging and cleanup of the Superfund site have been and will continue to be a vital part of ensuring this region continues its dominance in the fishing industry, can capitalize on the emerging offshore wind industry, and will experience further economic growth when Fairhaven-New Bedford Bridge is eventually replaced. Fairhaven and other nearby communities all realize the tremendous economic benefit associated with the harbor. This award takes on one of the clearest examples of environmental justice head on. The EPA website estimates there are over 100,000 people living within 3 miles of the Superfund site, as the Congressman stated. The EPA's Environmental Justice Screening Index for proximity to a Superfund site takes into account demographics and population and registers New Bedford registered as an excess risk category with extremely high scores in the 90th to 95th percentile. But in Fairhaven, we have parts of the town, particularly in our north end, that exceed over 80 percentile as well in that same index. We are extremely grateful to all those who have recognized the environmental injustice that was cast upon our area decades ago, and for your efforts to dig us out of this tragic mess, and for your support, and I mean you behind me here today, and for your support and in cleaning up this tragic mess and to complete this enormous task in a reasonable amount of time. I think I can say, I speak for most of us, that we are all very thankful for all the changes that have been implemented at the federal level over the years when it comes to rules, regulations, and oversight to prevent this sort of egregious disaster from ever happening again. And for the focus now being placed on environmental justice to ensure that communities like ours are treated with dignity, respect, and consideration when dealing with environmental impact. And I want to say a special thanks to Mayor Mitchell and his administration for the tireless efforts on behalf of the city that really are felt by us over in Fairhaven. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. So one of the key words today has been partnerships, and at EPA we work really closely with the Army Corps all over New England, and the relationship is incredibly positive and constructive. And one of the remarkable things I've been thinking about, Colonel, is that the job that you and your team does is to take the dreams and policy and turn it into physical manifestation. And it's phenomenal to work with you to see that transform. And so can everyone please welcome Colonel Adelano.
Thanks, Dr. Cash. Thanks, Dr. Cash. Appreciate it. It's one of the things I love about being the commander of the New England District is we don't get the easy jobs. We get asked to do the impossible. And then for us to do the impossible, I got to have two things. I got to have authorization, and I need a big check. I love how Senator Markey always says, a dream without money is just a hallucination. And that's 100% right. I want to thank everybody today. Senator Markey, Congressman Keating, Deputy Administrator McCabe, Dr. Cash, Lieutenant Governor Polito, Mr. Locke, Mayor Mitchell, Select Miss Mendola. Thank you all. Appreciate it. EPA and USACE began this journey, well over 30 years ago. Together in those years, we have accomplished so much. Intertidal and subtidal remediation south of Coggeshall Street is complete. Subtidal dredging and the intertidal remediation of 8 intertidal areas north of Coggeshall Street are also complete. We worked through the pandemic. We went, people getting sick, supply chain issues, you name it. We dealt with it just like everybody else did, and I have to say together we assessed the issues, and we found solutions. We found a way to put the ball in the end zone. There's more work ahead of us. And this spring we're installing wetland plantings in 2 zones north of Coggeshall Street, and we will be completing the remediation of the remaining 4 zones by October of this year. USACE and EPA have had an amazing partnership working on this project for more than 3 decades, and I'll be happy, as I'm sure everybody else will be happy when it concludes and we can move on to more impossible things to do. Bald eagles and other animals are already returning to the harbor, and that is a welcome sign of an improving environment. This additional funding announced today will allow us to complete the rest of the project, and we can all see the light at the end of the dark sediment-filled tunnel, and what a beautiful light it is. I want to thank everybody today, our congressional representatives, EPA, City of New Bedford, and my New Bedford Superfund team, who working for decades and decades to kind of lead everything and put it together. But it's also thank you to all of you. The Corps of Engineers doesn't do anything alone. We do nothing alone. It takes every one of you, everybody behind me, working together to achieve a vision. So give yourselves a round of applause, because we're all part of this team together. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks. What a great last line to end on. And I just have a couple of summary thoughts. Many of us have been talking about, as I did at the beginning, the winds, the multiple winds that cross economy and the environment and our communities. I was lucky enough, and there's a final win I wanted to talk about, and I got this idea from a former mayor, Dan Rivera, from Lawrence. And a couple of weeks ago, I was lucky enough to walk around the city with Buddy Andrade and a couple of his colleagues to tour the city. And this is the kind of win that all of these are wrapped in when you've got a place like a Superfund site like this. And the win is when you have a kid in a community that's a couple of 100 yards from here. And in that kid's lifetime, they look down at the harbor and they see rusting shells of fossil fuel tanks and a stack, and maybe a generation ago they were breathing what was coming out of that stack. And they're thinking, what does that mean for me? About my worth in this community? What of my parents and the adults who are supposed to be taking care of these kind of things? What are they doing? The big win is what we will see, and I love how, Lieutenant Governor, you brought up Deputy Administrator McCabe's grandkids. The win will be when that kid looks at this harbor and knows they can come down here and play by the harbor. Their parents aren't telling them to stay away from the water. When that kid looks over here and sees "for hire" signs as the offshore wind industry is taking off. When New Bedford and the state and the federal government are working really hard to make sure that jobs in the offshore wind industry goes to those communities who have been the least served and the most impacted by pollution, and do it very differently than the way we've done it in the IT boom and the pharma boom and the biotech boom that pass by these kinds of communities. That's when we'll know that win, when that kid looks down here and feels part of this harbor, part of the community, and knows that their parents and the adults who are in charge are getting it right. And they can look to the future in all the metaphors that have been set up here. Light at the end of the tunnel. It's a linchpin to the future. It's transformative. That's when we know we will have the big win. Thank you very much, everybody.